Hello, welcome to the Daily Grind here on Latte Firm, Tuesday, the 17th of June, and a very quiet 24 hours for Arsenal Football Club. We're going to talk about Nico Williams. Move on. It's time to let go. He is going to Barcelona. It's not going to be Arsenal. We're going to talk about players that we would release, and we're talking about unpopular opinions transfer edition. And I'm delighted to be joined by Sham. Sham, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much for having me on. Honestly, it's an honor.
It's a real pleasure to have you on, my friend. I don't think we've met before, although
Yeah. I was telling you backstage. So we got to talking about last time I was in London, and I went to the Arsenal Lyon Emirates Cup game, and I actually came out of the tube. I think it was the Arsenal stop right behind you and your kids. And I was gonna like run over and like say hi and all that stuff, and then my wife just grabbed my arm and she was like, he's with his kids. Like he's got enough to deal with without having to talk to you. So
you should have said hello. Next time,
yeah,
my friend. Next time.
for
Well,
sure, for
listen,
sure.
welcome to the show, man. Really appreciate it. Look, it's been a very slow 24 hours of news. I think the frustration amongst Arsenal fans, or those who are frustrated, there are a number of us who are quite patient, but those who are frustrated are just it's further compounded by the pace at which some of our rivals are doing stuff. So we're going to get your opinions on what you expect this window. We're going to talk about moving away from targets that are just quite literally wasting our time. We're going to talk around Thomas Partey. There's been news about contract expiry. He was on the release list. Apparently, Arteta wants to keep him, but he might now not get a new deal. Want to get your thoughts on that, and then we'll wrap up with unpopular transfer opinions. Who would you sign that you think would ruffle the feathers of the entire fan base? And boy, did I set the internet on fire last night. Just a couple of quick mentions here. Vlad says good evening to Dave as well. Guna73 listening in. Keep the chat active. If you're watching for the first time, please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, get involved in the chat. Donald says big up Sham. Louis saying hello as well. And Farhan, back to catching a daily grind live. You are all welcome. Keep the chat active. Right, first up, have you heard, Sham, that apparently Arsenal are interested in Benjamin Sesko, Victor Gyökeres, Rodrigo? I mean, this is new information.
Yeah, this is the first I'm seeing of this. Honestly, this is pretty mind blowing stuff here.
Look, the news has rumbled on, and we are edging closer. We are set to sign. We are considering talks. We are making moves. We're assessing the situation. We're just getting closer to camps. I mean, how do you feel about it all? I mean, frankly, I'm getting to the stage now, and maybe it's because I'm in the content game. It's getting quite boring, getting quite tiresome. It's like, come on, Arsenal, just make a move.
Yeah, I think it's a function of the ever going and like kind of the oversaturated like football media market these days, where it's just you have to keep the content going, like you said, you have to get the engagements up, you have to keep people interested. So I mean, Florian Plettenberg just had a tweet like 5 minutes ago where he said, Arsenal at this time do not want to pay the 80 to 100 million euros that the RB Leipzig want for Sheshko. And I was like, oh, okay. So they're negotiating? Like, it's. I think just the constant updates is really kind of starting to stress people out because, like you said, you look over at City and they've got Cherki and Reinders and Ait Nori, and then Liverpool. They're about to wrap up Verts. They've confirmed Frimpong. Kirkez's dad came out and said, we don't want any other team but Liverpool, and we're going to get that done. So, those are our two biggest rivals. And it feels like we're just kind of treading water. But I think it's important to remember we got Zubamendi over the line. Sounds like we got that backup keeper in early, and it's it's someone I actually would trust for a few games. So we've done some stuff. I just think, my advice to people would be just to maybe take a break from social media for a couple of days and just kind of go enjoy life, kind of just tune out until like the beginning of July and then come back and see where we are.
As sensible as that sounds, and as wise advice as that is, we cannot help it. We are like moths to
No.
a flame when it comes to transfer speculation and all the socials. Louis says the window is open, but not for us. And by the way, Hand of Arsenal, the ITK goat. If you're not following Hand of Arsenal on socials, what are you doing? Get on there. He's been releasing news, nuggets of news throughout. Says Shams is actually one of the best writers on X. There you go. A lot of love from the goat himself, Sham.
That's really sweet. Hand is my guy. I love talking to him.
He is. He's class. But listen, Hand, that's a great name. Hand, just give us a nugget right now. What's happening? What is happening? Look, on a serious note, really frustrating that nothing's happened. I think there is a timing issue. You know, we'll announce Kepa at some point, I'm sure. Quite happy with him as a backup goalkeeper. Zubamendi, you know, Real Sociedad have basically asked Arsenal to push back so that we can buy the player on their accounting preferences in terms of the new financial year. Of these guys, and we were talking before coming on air about, you know, what you would want to do and whether it's, you know, wingers or centre forwards, you know, what's your priority? What do you think the priority is for Arsenal? And if you had your pick of the three players on screen, who are you making moves for?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two things that Arsenal need to accomplish in the summer. And the first thing, obviously, is bringing in some forward talent, right? We've desperately lacked that for a few seasons now. It's time to put a bow on that and get the players in who can actually put the ball in the back of the net. The second thing I'd want to see us do is to get some numbers on the bench and just have some quality that can help alleviate kind of the burden on other players, like the key players like Saka and Gabriel and Rice and all them, guys who can take minutes off them. So that's what I want Arsenal to do. In terms of who I want out of the center forwards, I'm a pretty big Šeško fan, to be quite honest. Obviously, my number one choice is Isak. I want to put that out there, but probably not doable at this point. So
well,
I want.
Do you know what,
yeah.
Sham? I got to stop you there, and forgive me for
Sure.
interrupting. I hate doing that to my guests, but depending on who you follow and what you believe on socials, apparently Liverpool are going to do some batshit mental sales, and they're going to go big on Isak towards the end of the window. I mean, if there's a sniff of him being available, do you maybe think that's why Arsenal are a little bit slow out of the blocks with these two?
You have to wonder about it, right? Because if Liverpool think they have a chance at him, uh, you know, I don't see why we wouldn't also feel that way. Obviously, Liverpool are the current champions and all that, but I think we can offer just as much as Liverpool can. And if Isak were to join us, we'd suddenly become favorites for the title. So if that is something that's doable, and we have to sell a Martinelli to make that happen, or something like that, then or Calafiori, then I think that's something that we really should look at because, as much as I like Šeško, neither of these two options on the screen right now are really foolproof, right? Like they both can go wrong in their own ways. So yeah, that's a possibility. I hope we try.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Every player is always a bit of a gamble, and we've never been a club that has the luxury of just sort of writing off a player that doesn't quite work out and replacing big. We don't get the luxury of having these shiny new toys every time we want that. So you're absolutely right. I think Isak is probably the next most obvious hit. Like when we bought Declan Rice, there was no air of doubt. We knew that £100 million was going to get this guy into the team and he was going to elevate us, and he's absolutely done that. And I think with Isak, maybe there are worries around injury proneness, but actually with his quality, no doubt at all. Now with Šeško, a lot's been talked about. He's the younger guy, he's the project, he's got all the physical attributes, 6'5", speed, frame, all that sort of stuff. Gyökeres, you cannot deny his goal-scoring pedigree, albeit in a slightly less competitive league, if I can say that. I mean that with the greatest respect to the Primera Division. He's got a prolific goal-scoring record. Both of these two guys could come in and do a job, but Isak would let us fly. Rodrigo, as Hand of Arsenal says, check his pinned tweet. He has a pinned tweet about Arsenal's number one left wide target being Rodrigo this summer. Is he a player that would excite you?
Absolutely. I mean, this is a guy who has starred for Real Madrid. I mean, obviously, he's maybe the third or fourth fiddle at this point, but this is a guy who is absolutely sensational. And I think platformed in the right team really will go to another level and will kind of establish himself as one of the best forwards in the world. Honestly, it reminds me a lot of what we did with Gabriel Jesus, where you could see that there was a really talented player in there, but he wasn't the star anymore. So I think Rodrigo's kind of at the same point. And yeah, I mean, a front line of Saka, we'll say Havertz just to play it safe, and Rodrigo, I think that's pretty talented and really scary for other teams.
It is indeed. Listen, I hope Arsenal make moves on these boys, and I hope they wait and do things at their own pace. And with Berta around, no one really has a clue what's going on. If we talk about targets that we should move on from, last summer we saw, Sham, that we went through an entire summer chasing other players. We ended up on deadline day scrambling Raheem Sterling over the line. And it was quite farcical because Edu came out after the window had shut and sort of admitted that, this guy wasn't our plan A or plan B or even plan Z, but we got him over the line because we needed to. there's been a lot of noise, and listen, the journalists know that we are easy prey. We are craving transfer speculation. We go absolutely mental when it's a player that it's not someone that we like, or a player that's completely out of the blue. But with Nico Williams, I always felt that he was someone that was never really interested in a move to Arsenal in the Premier League. I can't quite sort of explain why. My logic would assume that this is a Spanish boy, young boy, played in Spain for so long. For anyone in that country of the Spanish national team, when Barcelona and Real Madrid come knocking on your door, you're not going to look anywhere else. And it looks like Barcelona, although Bayern Munich are keen on him, are going to get his man. I mean, do you agree with the sentiment of just move on and move on quickly, Arsenal, when you don't have any sort of interest, when there's no real substance to the links? As Leo just says, easy clicks with the release clause. It's easy journalism, lazy journalism. Do you think Arsenal should just be, forgetting about these players and moving on to other targets quickly?
I mean, definitely in the case of Nico Williams, I think it's time to accept that that's just not something that's going to happen for us. I think if the player is really talented and there's an inkling of hope, I don't whether that's some indication that the player gives you or whether the agent gives it to you or something like that, then maybe. But I think the problem for us has always been, at least under Edu, that he tended to kind of zero in on one or two guys, and just kind of, when those didn't happen, he was kind of left holding the bag, didn't really have an option after that. I think the thing about Berta is, it seems to me that he likes to kind of keep multiple deals in the air, negotiate with multiple players, and then kind of, when he's 100% sure of what the packages are going to look like for all those guys, make his decision, right? So with Nico Williams, I think it's been clear for some time that he wanted to go to Barcelona, right? And I think all of the actions, if you want to believe the reports, those have all kind of indicated that that was his number one. That was the team that he was holding out for. He was willing to stay at Bilbao for an extra year for them. And, it makes sense, right? Spanish players have a history of kind of holding out for Real Madrid and Barcelona. We as Arsenal fans are no strangers to that. And he seems to have a really close relationship with Lamine Yamal over at Barca. So I can imagine him thinking that it's a dream scenario to go there. And, even reportedly, he's kind of lowered his wage demands a bit for Barcelona just so that they can afford him. So, yeah, I think that says it all. So I think, as good a player as he is, as great a fit as he would have been for us, I think it's time to kind of move on. And, there are other options in the market. We just talked about Rodrigo. There's
let's do that, because we just mentioned Rodrigo. He is obviously number one target. I'm not going to challenge Hand of Arsenal. He is well connected, and he suggested that. But the options are beginning to diminish. You think about Brian Mbeumo. He was a player that I would have quite liked. I know he's a right-sided player, but with United and now Spurs trying to gazump, looks like he's going to be set for one of those. Leroy Sané off the table, not someone that I would have liked, but he of course was linked with us. Nico Williams now looks like he's going to go to Barca. Maybe there's some sort of backdoor access to Rafinha there, but who knows? When you're talking, I mean, again, you sort of, when we were exchanging messages, you mentioned Antoine Semenyo, but there are others, Mitoma, maybe Eze sort of playing out wide, Ademola Lookman, maybe even someone that we've not been linked with. I mean, where were you going to go with your sort of thoughts on a wide player if it's not to be Rodrigo?
If it's not Rodrigo, I think maybe the two I'd want to, we'll say three. The three I'd want to take a look at are Rafa Leao, Bradley Barcola, and Lookman, Ademola Lookman. I do really like Antoine Semenyo as well. And, if there is a possibility of having three forwards this summer, Semenyo's the first guy I'd want to come in as that third forward. Yeah. But
what is it about him that you like so much? I mean, Harj says, I'd love us to go for Semenyo. Can play on both sides, strike a ball with both feet. Donald says Semenyo is one of my shouts. Like him a lot. And actually, to be fair, when we did a couple of late night lounges ago, which is our Friday night show, I brought up Semenyo because I remember Monday Night Football on Sky Sports, which you might not get over in the States, but I'm sure you've seen maybe some of the footage. They had a stats team for the end of the year, of the calendar year, and it was like based on stats, defensive numbers, and output. Semenyo was one of the wide players, and it really sort of like knocked me off my chair. I didn't see it. I don't see it when I see him, but his numbers are obviously, you can't debate them.
Yeah, the numbers are good. I think just kind of, there's some base qualities about him that I really like. He's very two-footed. He can operate on either wing. Obviously, kind of a tall guy. I think he's like 6'1", 6'2", if I remember correctly. Um, which is always nice. We love having tall players in the team. Also, in addition to that, he's an Arsenal fan, which I just think, not to get into soft factors too much, but I think that always tends to lead to someone maybe giving that extra bit when they put the shirt on. Not to mention he's got a killer long throw in him, and us set piece sickos, we're really into that. So yeah, no, I think he's a really talented player. I think he's in a different tier than guys like Rodrigo and Leao and Barcola, but I do think that as the options diminish, that's a guy who, because of his experience in the league and because of his talent, he has fewer risk factors attached to him than maybe other guys in the market.
No, I appreciate that. There's a lot of shouts for Barcola in the chat. Listen, he's just won the Champions League with PSG, and I know he's been on the bench for some of the season, but there's no way he's going to leave this summer, maybe the year after. Farhan says, if it's not Rodrigo or Barcola, Leao excites me, hoping Mikel would or could get the best out of him. We'll have to wait and see. Something else that we need to think about, Sham, is moving players on, and news over the last sort of 24 hours. Thomas Partey. Now, really interesting. That he's apparently wanting a pay rise. He wants a new contract. Mikel Arteta, for the longest time towards the back end of last season, was saying that he wanted Partey to stay. Contract hadn't been agreed. He was on the official Premier League release list as issued by the Premier League, and I think that was more of a timing thing. Talks are still ongoing. What's your thoughts on, whether you'd entertain a 1+1 type extension as is being talked about? Is Thomas Partey someone that you'd like to see Arsenal keep next season?
Not really. I think I don't really understand this this assertion that maybe he's a key player for the team. I mean, obviously, he's had a really good season, right? I don't think you can take that away from him. But for me, when I watched Partey this season, I saw a guy who, obviously had some benefits in his game, but I just think he made a lot of mistakes. And, he gave away the ball in really dangerous areas for us, like in our third, in the middle third. He wasn't very reliable tracking back. And I'm not under any impression that, we deploy a 6 who just sits in front of the back 4, but there were countless counterattacks where you could just see Partey almost jogging back. I'm not trying to give any takes on what his effort level was, but it seemed he couldn't keep up with teams when they countered against us, which I thought was a worry. I think back to moments like Chelsea's equalizer in that 1-1 against us. Watkins scoring to equalize against us after we'd been beating Villa 2-0. He burned a Partey on that set piece. And even, against PSG, right, where Real Madrid were done and dusted, right? The tie was over, and he still got into a pretty boneheaded fight with Rudiger, got that yellow card that suspended him for the first leg of PSG. So, I see a guy who, if we want to keep him just because it makes things easier in terms of the amount of business that we have to do this summer, sure, I can understand that, but I don't think this isn't a player I'm desperate to keep, and I think there's options in terms of if we wanted to replace him. You have Lewis Skelly, who can deputize in that role. You have players kind of around, whether in the Premier League or abroad, such as Lucy and Agume, who you can look at, and another player I have in mind we'll talk about, I guess, in a bit. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not really convinced by Partey. I'm not. If he wants a pay rise, I'm more than happy to just kind of let him find that somewhere else.
Look, 12 months ago, I remember doing a sort of pre-season preview with some of the boys on Latte Firm and Laura, and we were all asked to talk about, our young player of the season that we're expecting to watch, one to watch, our biggest disappointment, this, that, and the other. And in the category of unexpected star performer, I actually stuck my neck out on the line and said Thomas Partey. I thought if he gets his surgery done and if he can, keep fit, on his day, we know football-wise, he's a fantastic player. I do agree with you that there have been times this season where the game's just gone past him. Like physically, he's been present, he's been available, fantastic. Probably his best season at Arsenal in terms of availability. But there have been moments in games where the game's just passed him by. And sadly for him, he's at the wrong end of his career where he's not going to get any faster. He's not going to get any fitter. He's not going to get any stronger. He's not going to be any more mobile. If anything, this is probably his peak. And we're not experts on this field, and I'm not going to go into the detail, obviously, but we know that there is noise around him. And for me, football wise, primarily, because that's all I can sort of comment on, I don't think he's the answer. I think the midfield has to be evolved. We had Clive Palmer of the Arsenal Vision podcast join the Daily Grind just 2 or 3 days ago, talking about you always got to look for times to renew. And when he says renew, he means sort of, refresh and evolve and move on. And I think this is the time. I don't want to be sat here trying to justify, a pay rise on what's been a decent season for someone who's at the wrong end of his career. And, now is the time. Just release, move on. We've got Zubimendi coming in. I think that still leaves us a bit short. We can hopefully find the money to go out and get another pair of legs. But the opinion is split, in the chat. And it's kind of like what I expected as Trevor Bibbins and JG Gunner have just joined. Hamid says Partey is excellent in bigger games where teams come onto us against low block teams. We struggle with him. There's lots of people saying that, got to move on from Partey. And Mike Jones says, I want to move on from Partey, but if we're going to spend £50 million on a replacement in the summer where we've got to sign so many other players, a 1-year deal does look tempting. Alex saying, look, midfield's got to evolve. Zubi is replacing him. Now need our Jorginho replacement. And the Eddie 1401, welcome to the show, says keep Partey 100%. If we can sign aging Chelsea and City players, we can keep our own. He's class on his day. So look, the Arsenal fan base or the Arsenal following that watch Latte Firm seem to be split in opinion, but I think he's someone that I'd like to move on. Let's move on. By the way, hundreds of you are tuning into tonight's show. Please do like the video, subscribe to the channel, get involved in the chat. Tomorrow we'll have Elliot of the Arsenal Vision podcast. Thursday we'll have Michael Timms, who is the host on the Arsenal match day of Live from N5. Next week I've got Rory Talks Football, Sammy Mockbell of the BBC, Alexander Moneypenny of the Different Knock, and Art De Roche of the Athletic. So lots of content to come. Get involved, subscribe, and all that sort of jazz. I'm going to ask you for your unpopular signing, transfer edition. Now, chat, let me know. What do you guys think? Who would you sign? I set Twitter on fire last night. It was the last thing that I said before I went to bed, and I did it exactly deliberately. And my shout, as I've said maybe loosely a couple of times, the one to watch out for would be Alejandro Garnacho. I think people are sleeping on this boy, but this show is not about me. The show is about you. So tell us, Sham, who is your unpopular signing, transfer edition, someone that you would like to see Arsenal sign but would ruffle feathers?
This one was tough because a lot of the players I'd like to sign are players that most of the Arsenal fan base would also love to have. So I had to dig a little deep here. But I would go with Amadou Onana from Aston Villa. And, this is who I'd put forth as the Partey replacement, basically, right? If you were to take off, I was really interested in him when he left Everton. That was someone I was hoping that we'd go for. Unfortunately, it wasn't to be. But I think Onana has a lot of great traits, right? Obviously, he's huge, right? I forget exactly how tall he is. I want to say like 6'8" or something like that. But really big guy. Really good off the ball, great tackler. He can play as a 6, he can play as an 8. He, I think, is better on the ball than people give him credit for. I think he's a pretty decent carrier. Has a good pass in him, especially his switches. I like his switches a lot. And like Louis said here, he also gives hilarious interviews when he get his name wrong. So
this was absolutely genius.
Yeah.
And do you know what? I think that was the first time that I'd heard him speak, and he had an accent that I was not expecting to come out of his mouth. It was just brilliant.
I was
absolutely brilliant.
shocked.
That's not even my name, mate. But I mean, look, back to the football. Like physically, an imposing character, 6 foot plus frame. Obviously, been in the Premier League for a while. Actually, there's a lot of people in the chat that are saying this is a good choice. Although Toby's not convinced. Toby says Onana is not good on the ball. Hashtag. That's a typo there, clearly. But like, is this the sort of player that actually, if we were to get Zubimendi over the line and Partey does move on, or whether Partey stays, like, should we be stacking our midfield with, physical specimens like him, and he's obviously a technically good footballer as well. To be a national for Belgium, to be playing in the Premier League for 2 different clubs, he's obviously something
Champions
about
League
him.
experience too.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think also, Villa have to sell, right? They have really put themselves in a pickle financially by not getting into the Champions League. And look, Onana's not the first guy. He's not like the first guy I'd choose from Aston Villa. If I were to have my pick of those players, he's probably third after Watkins and Rodgers.
Oh
Which I
yes.
think is, one, a testament to how good that squad is, and two, a testament to what a bad job Emery did this season. I wanted to put the boot in there a little bit, but yeah, I think he's a guy with the Champions League experience. Like you said, he played on his national team, Premier League experience, and I don't think he'd be that expensive. I'd think anywhere between 40 and 55 million. So I like I said, I want Arsenal to have quality and quantity in numbers. And Onana is one of those guys who fits the bill for me.
Well, listen, if we're going to go to Aston Villa and raid them to help them with their PSR, Morgan Rogers is a very popular shout in the chat. Mafia Boss says, Rogers to the carpet, please, Latte. I love it how people call me Latte. Absolutely love that. Listen, Sham, it's been really great to hear your thoughts on, obviously, the transfer speculation that surrounds Arsenal, but also, moving on from targets and moving other players away. If I were to ask you to sort of think about the rest of this window, how confident are you with Andrea Berta at the club now, and Mikel Arteta's under a lot of pressure? How confident are you as a fan, as someone who podcasts about the club and who writes about the club, that we are going to get our business done and go strong in next year's title race?
I'm still very confident, honestly, and that's because we have to get that business done, right? We are in a situation now where, like I said, City have gotten better, Liverpool have gotten better, right? Even after winning the title, they didn't sit on their laurels. They made some signings that are statements of intent, right? Even Spurs could have stuck with Ange because he won them a dinky little Europa League trophy, but they made the hard decision. They went and got Thomas Frank, who's an excellent manager, and now they're in for a couple really interesting players, and so they're gonna take advantage of getting back into the Champions League through the back door. So everyone around us is improving, and if we don't add to, especially in the forward department, I don't like our odds. We'll still be a great team, right? But the fact of the matter is, we have to go that extra step, and we have to get that extra talent. Otherwise, we're probably looking at another season where we come up short. So, and I think this is Berta's first summer in the position. So, you kind of want to start things off in a good note, don't you? And like bring in those players. So yeah, I think they're going to do it. It might happen a little later than we all want it to. That's how Arsenal like to do things, unfortunately. But I think when the season starts, we will have probably 3 to 4 new players in Arsenal jerseys, maybe 5 if we're lucky. But I think 3
Let's
to 4.
hope so. Let's hope so. We need them. Boy, do we need them. I think we're going to leave it there. Sham, tell the world where people can find you and your work.
Sure. Yeah. So you can follow me at Shamsdale right there, but also I host a podcast called Not That Kind of Gooner, an Arsenal podcast. So you can follow that on Twitter at Not That Gooner and on Blue Sky at notthatgooner.bsky.social. And I also have a Substack called The Non-Negotiables, which will be back up and running after a brief summer hiatus shortly. So
awesome. Do get involved. Do follow Sham on socials. And speaking of socials, Vig says, FK saw your Garnacho tweet. What were you thinking? I wanted to ruffle the Arsenal fan base, and boy, did I. 250,000 views in like 2 hours because people were quoting that tweet, calling me a madman. But Ian is beginning to break. He's going to come on the journey with me. I take Garnacho. Think Arteta would turn him into a great player. That is where we're going to leave it. Thank you so much, Sham, for joining us. Of course, he is available via all his socials. Sam also says, incredible pod name will be following. Thank you so much for that. Until tomorrow, Elliot of the Arsenal Vision podcast, a man who speaks so fast and always predicts 10-0 victories. He will be joining me tomorrow. So come in and tune in for that. Look after yourselves. It's a warm night. Stay cool. Enjoy your day tomorrow. And until next time, it is goodbye for now.